Go ahead, take a look in your wallet. See that little piece of plastic? It feels so normal, right? So everyday. But I promise you, its story is anything but. It is a wild tale of a brilliant marketing myth, a chaotic experiment that went completely off the rails, and a technological arms race that has totally reshaped how we live and how we spend. Okay, let's get into it. So, right off the bat, we gotta get one thing straight. The official story that we all think we know, well, let's just say it was a very deliberate and very effective piece of marketing. The real story is so much more interesting and a whole lot messier. All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're gonna bust that famous wallet myth. Then we'll get into the chaotic event that actually launched consumer credit. From there, we'll see how that Wild West got tamed, trace the tech arms race for security, and finally, look at where the card is going now that it's literally vanishing from our wallets. Okay, you've probably heard this one. The story goes that back in 1949, a businessman named Frank McNamara is at dinner at a place called Major's Cabin Grill. He reaches for his wallet, and it's not there. The sheer embarrassment gives him an idea, and a year later, he comes back and pays with this little cardboard card. They even called it the First Supper. It's a perfect, relatable origin story, right? The only problem? It was pretty much made up to sell the whole idea. See, the reality was a little different. The original Diners Club card wasn't even a credit card. It was a charge card. That means you had to pay the balance in full every single month. It was really a convenience tool for wealthy businessmen, and it was funded by annual membership fees and a pretty hefty 7% cut from the merchants. This whole thing was about status and convenience, not about borrowing money. The real revolution, the moment that put actual borrowing power into the hands of ordinary people, that didn't happen in some fancy New York restaurant. Nope. It happened in 1958 in Fresno, California, and it started with a wildly ambitious and frankly reckless experiment by Bank of America. Just try to imagine this. You open your mailbox one day, and there it is, a live, ready-to-use line of credit that you never, ever asked for. That's exactly what Bank of America did. They just blanketed an entire city with the first ever Bank Americard. And with it, they introduced this world-changing idea of revolving credit. You know, the ability to borrow, pay some of it back, and then borrow again, all without having to reapply. It was dangerous, and it changed literally everything. 60,000 cards just sent out completely cold. The bank had no idea who was getting them. Good credit risk, bad credit risk, it didn't matter. They just sent them. It was a massive, citywide gamble. And the result? Oh, it was a complete and total disaster. Fraud was everywhere, and the delinquency rate, the number of people who didn't pay their bills, hit an astonishing 22%. To put that in perspective, that's 5 times higher than their normal loans. The gamble had failed spectacularly. But here's the incredible part. That epic failure, that was the price of innovation. The absolute chaos of the Fresno Drop forced Bank of America to invent the very systems our entire global economy now runs on. We're talking sophisticated credit scoring, fraud detection, modern collections departments. It was all born from the ashes of that disaster. So the industry was growing like crazy, but it was basically a free-for-all. To become the stable system we know today, 2 really big things had to happen. The banks had to figure out a way to work together, and the government had to step in and lay down some ground rules. The big breakthrough came from a banker named D. Hawk. He had this brilliant insight. Competing banks would never trust a payment system owned by just one of them. So his radical idea was to create what he called a chaotic organization, a system that was a blend of chaos and order. It was basically a cooperative network owned by all the member banks. This way, they could cooperate on the rules and the infrastructure, but they could still compete like crazy on the actual products they sold you. That one brilliant idea is what transformed Bank Americard into Visa and a rival group into Mastercard. Now, on the government side, the first huge step was the Truth in Lending Act. You know, before 1968, trying to shop for credit was almost impossible. The terms were confusing, every bank had different rules, it was a mess. TELA forced lenders to explain the cost of credit, especially the APR, in a clear, standard way. For the first time, consumers were actually empowered to make smart choices. And this might be the single most important number in the entire history of the credit card. The Fair Credit Billing Act of 1974 capped your personal liability for fraud at just $50. Think about that. This created a massive psychological safety net. It gave all of us the confidence to actually carry and use these cards, knowing that we were protected from some catastrophic loss. It was a game changer. So with the business and the legal stuff figured out, the next chapter of this story is all about technology. Because as cards got more popular, so did the criminals trying to rip them off. And this kicked off a constant back and forth battle between security innovation and fraud. The first big battle was between two pieces of tech. You had the magnetic stripe, which was a huge leap forward, right? It allowed for electronic transactions. But it had a fatal flaw. Its data was static. It was always the same, which made it dangerously easy to copy or skim. The answer to that was the EMV chip, what we all use today. It works in a completely different way. Instead of static data, the chip creates a dynamic, one-time use code for every single purchase. A thief could steal that code, but by the time they tried to use it, it would already be worthless. So you might be wondering, if the chip was so much better, why was the US so slow to adopt it? Well, the simple answer is money. Upgrading millions of payment terminals was super expensive. The stalemate was finally broken by this really clever move called the liability shift. The card networks basically laid down a new rule. From now on, if counterfeit fraud happened, whoever had the older, less secure technology, whether it was the bank or the merchant, they had to eat the cost. And just like that, it became way more expensive not to upgrade. Securing the physical card with a chip was a huge win, but all it did was push the criminals online to what's called card-not-present fraud. This new threat forced the next big evolution. The card started to disappear from our physical wallets and move into our devices. The key technology here is something called tokenization. It's the engine that powers mobile wallets like Apple Pay. See, instead of sending your actual 16-digit card number to a merchant, your phone sends a secure, one-time use token. So, even if that merchant gets hacked later on, all the thieves get is a pile of useless expired tokens. Your real account number stays safe. It's basically the chip's security principle, just for the digital world. And another really powerful tool is the virtual card. It's a disposable number you can generate for a single online purchase. And as you can see, adoption is growing like crazy. Nearly half of all consumers have already used one. It's just one more layer of defense for our real accounts in this digital world. So that brings us to right now, into the future. We've gone from cardboard to plastic to pixels on a screen. So what happens next? What happens when the card disappears completely? This is the big question that everyone in the industry is trying to answer. If the ultimate goal is a perfectly seamless and totally secure transaction, what does that actually look like? Well, the future seems to be coming down to two incredibly powerful ideas. First, biometrics. This changes the game entirely. Security is no longer something you have, like a card in your wallet, but something you are. Your face, your fingerprint, your palm. And at the same time, AI is going to be working silently in the background, not just stopping fraud before it can even happen, but maybe even acting as your own hyper-personalized financial guide. And that leaves us with this final thought. We've traced this whole journey from a forgotten wallet sparking an idea, all the way to a future where our very identity is the key. So, if your face becomes your card, what happens to your wallet then? The revolution that started at a dinner table isn't over. It's just becoming a part of us.